Hello YouTube. This is taking longer than I expected, and I haven't even gotten into McCain's worst flip-flops in parts 1 and 2. But you'll hear them now in part 3 of Don't Vote for the Douche or the Turd. At first glance, Iraq seems to be one of the few things McCain's been consistent on. But as they say, the devil's in the details. On the occupation of Iraq, McCain has said, "The American people were led to believe that this would be some day at the beach, which many of us fully understood from the beginning will be very, very difficult undertaking. I knew that it was probably going to be long and hard and tough. Those that voted for it and somehow thought it was going to be some kind of easy task, then I'm sorry they were mistaken. They didn't know what they were voting for. Indeed, they were mistaken, and indeed they did not know what they were voting for." And McCain was one of those people he described on September 15th, 2002. But the fact is, I think we could go in with much smaller numbers than we had to do in the past. But any military man with assault is going to have to prepare for any contingency, but I don't believe it's going to be nearly the size and scope that it was in 1991. January 28th, 2003. I think the victory will be rapid within about 3 weeks. April 9th, 2003. It's clear that the end is very much in sight. It won't be long. It'll be a fairly short period of time. April 9th, 2003. McCain was even arrogant enough to say this on June 11th, 2003 about perhaps one of Bush's most shameful political stunts. Well then, why was there a banner that said "Mission Accomplished" on the aircraft carrier? Of course, this was a very different tune than the one he took earlier that year on February 13th. "We cannot keep our forces indefinitely staged in the region. Were we to attempt again to contain Saddam, we would eventually have to withdraw them. The world is full of dangers, and more likely than not, we'll need some of those brave men and women to face them down." And of course, McCain made that famous comment that I'm sure you have all heard by now, that we should remain in Iraq, quote, "even if it takes 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 years." Of course, not wanting to be known as John 100 Years McCain for any reason other than his age, McCain once again called on his favorite form of obfuscation on February 25th, 2008. "My friends, the war will be over soon. The war for all intents and purposes, although the insurgency will go on for years and years. But it will be handled by the Iraqis, not by us." Of course, ignoring the fact that the only way that is possible is for us to get the hell out of there. That and everything else I've mentioned in this video, with the exception of voting for the Iraq War in the first place, though, pales in comparison to the dangerous and irresponsible political stunt McCain did last year when he toured the Baghdad market. Commenting on the trip on April 1st, 2007, McCain said, "There are neighborhoods in Baghdad where you and I could walk through those neighborhoods today." McCain's feeble attempt to explain himself on March 8, 2008 were quite interesting. "There's problems in America with safe neighborhoods, as we all know." Which is indeed true, but even the most dangerous neighborhoods in America don't require a security detail of 1 bulletproof vest, 100 American troops, 3 Black Hawk helicopters, and 2 Apache gunships. That's right, folks, that was McCain's security detail on the supposedly safe trip. It is no surprise that McCain was unable to defend the indefensible, as he put the lives of 100 troops and Iraqi civilians in danger for a cynical political ploy that I'm sure made Karl Rove himself proud. Though I bet he wishes he thought of it. Despite the fact that McCain was tortured for 5 years in a Hanoi Hilton, he even flip-flopped on that. McCain has, until his unfortunate vote on February 13th of this year, advocated requiring that the guidelines of the Army Field Manual be used for the interrogations of all prisoners. In this statement on November 16, 2007, McCain even said, "One of the things that kept us going when I was in prison in North Vietnam was that we knew that if the situation were reversed, that we would not be doing to our captors what they were doing to us." McCain justified voting against a bill that would do what he has long advocated by saying that it would prevent the president from taking the lawful actions necessary to protect Americans from attack in wartime. So in other words, if the bill passes, your children will die. Let's review, shall we? McCain was against the Bush tax cuts until he was for them. He supported balancing the budget until he opposed it. He was for gay marriage before he was against it. He was for Social Security privatization before he was against it. He was against ethanol before he was for it. He was for cap and trade before he was against it. He was for a windfall profits tax on oil companies before he was against it. He was against oil drilling before he was for it. Was for the environment before he was against it. Was against the religious right before he was for them. Believed that Iraq would be easy before he believed it would be difficult. Was for being in Iraq for 100 years before he was against it. And was for the Constitution of the United States of America, which as a public servant he was sworn to protect before he was, unfortunately, against it. Of course, yet despite these and other obvious inconsistencies, which would take several more videos to even scratch the surface of, McCain is campaigning on his personal integrity and the consistency of his positions. The sad thing is, as I've said back in Part 1, McCain was not always like this. At one point in his life, the reputation of maverick was deserved. But now it's nothing more than political fodder which can be used and abandoned as political expedience dictates. The sad story of John McCain's transformation from a maverick to a turd sandwich is a cautionary tale that in far too many cases, even those who have begun their political careers with the most idealistic and honorable of intentions can be lured into the Washington culture of corruption in the hopes of soaring to political heights. That is why we as voters must take our responsibility to demand nothing short of absolute accountability from our leaders. That's all for Part 3 of Don't Vote for the Douche or the Turd. Stay tuned for Part 4 where I finally get to the Giant Douche Barack Obama and his change that we can supposedly believe in.